I'm hanging up the phone. Pella Windows Postgame Show. We're live here at the UGA bookstore, and great to have you with us. What a night it was as Georgia gets a win against Notre Dame. 23-17 is your final score. Maybe a little more hard-fought than some UGA fans would have liked for it to be, but nonetheless, Georgia does go out there and hold on to the lead, preserve the opportunity. It was in many ways a thrilling night, if not more thrilling than some UGA fans would have wished that it were, or hoped that it would have been. There is certainly plenty for us to talk about, and we'll do that here from the UGA bookstore as a part of our Pella Windows Postgame Show. Of course, it is great to have all of you with us. We'll do a lot of this on Facebook, YouTube. We'll try to catch up with Jeff Sintel here after the game, find out what his thoughts were on this, and I guess let me begin right here, and obviously I'm going to give a lot of you a chance to weigh in. We've obviously had, like you might expect on a night like this, challenges in terms of cell reception and things like that, so hopefully we'll be able to take as many comments as we're used to being able to take. But I am curious to hear your thoughts on all of this. I think for me, the number one takeaway right away is the fact that this was the most awe-inspiring night I've ever spent in Sanford Stadium. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't think that, you can... Okay.
No, he is.
A little bit of an issue there, but it sounds like we're in good shape and ready to go here. I apologize for that. What I was saying a moment ago, and hopefully you caught this. Hopefully our signal remains strong here to be able to deliver this here today. I thought this was the most awe-inspiring night I've ever spent in Sanford Stadium. The way the lights were employed, the way the fans came ready to make an impact on this game. They were making noise before the game began. An hour plus ahead of the start of the game. Sanford Stadium, duly fielded Sanford Stadium, was essentially full. Students were essentially packed in. There was music blaring. They were dancing. It was really the coolest environment in all of college football tonight. And for me, that's my number one takeaway, more so than anything else, is the way that UGA fans showed out. Notre Dame jumps false starts, 6-7 times tonight by my count. The official count may be a little bit different on that, but clearly the Irish were affected by that noise. And before you get to anything else for the game, I think Georgia fans have to take a moment to pat themselves on the back and say, undoubtedly, UGA fans impacted this football game today. Undoubtedly, UGA fans really went out and delivered what needed to be delivered in terms of creating an ultimate atmosphere, the kind of thing that other programs are going to look in here and be jealous about. It was a great commercial for Georgia football tonight on CBS. A perfectly played game on the part of the Bulldogs? Obviously not. A great commercial for UGA? I don't think there's any doubt about that whatsoever. So years from now, when we look back on this, we won't think about so much the moments of ineffectiveness of the UGA offense as much as we will think about the ways in which the Georgia fans created a unforgettable atmosphere. So that's my, I guess, first takeaway on that. But there's plenty more for you to say and talk about here as well, and we'll take a lot of your comments and give you a chance to do just that as folks are on their way outside of duly fielded Sanford Stadium. They're getting back to their tailgates, or they're settling in from having watched this on TV tonight. So we'll give you a chance to weigh in as part of our Pella Windows postgame show here live from the UGA bookstore. And, of course, we appreciate the UGA bookstore staying open late for us tonight and giving us a chance to do all of that. So good to have you here. Appreciate you being here. Jason Blocker says, why couldn't UGA stop one Ian Book with a and obviously the tight end tonight had a big game for Notre Dame. Book had a big game, and that certainly presented a challenge for Georgia. I think you got to give credit for the Irish's offensive game plan, how they neutralized what was I mean, certainly Georgia attempted to get pressure on Book tonight, and it didn't work. I mean, this was, I think, in a lot of ways, a coaching win for Notre Dame. They found a way to keep this game closer than the experts would have thought. They found a way to get their big tight end up and running here today. I thought Ian Book played this game courageously, and time again, Georgia tried to get pass pressure today and was not able to do that. Now, Georgia made up for that with a couple big interceptions. So from that standpoint, they found havoc in the defensive secondary without necessarily finding that when it comes to what they did in the backfield with Book and getting after him. But ultimately, I do think you have to give credit to Brian Kelly and his coaching staff for finding a sequence of plays that work. And you'll say the same thing about the Irish on the defensive side of the ball. They came up with a game plan that neutralized Georgia's ability to run the football, and how Georgia responded to that, sometimes better than others. Obviously, Lawrence Cager came up big with a couple of big receptions, and yet it seemed like Georgia had a hard time knowing what it wanted to do when it could not establish the run the way that we're used to seeing that established. We'll look more at some of those stats on that coming up in just a moment. A lot of comments rolling in, as you might imagine. We'll continue to take them. Sean Shannon says, not sure what most was expecting, but they don't score that first touchdown without the fumble. All in all, it was a gritty win. And, Sean, I'm glad you're saying that the way that you are, because I think overall the point you make is a good one. This was a gritty win. We learned something about Georgia, even if it's not exactly what we wanted it. If Georgia fans would have wanted to learn about their team tonight, but they found out they could grit their way through a win, even though maybe what some fans were hoping for was kind of a fabulous display of all the the weapons that Georgia possesses offensively. This was more about lunch pail and rolling up your sleeves and getting to work, but Georgia did do just that. And I think you also bring up a really good point that the Tyler Simmons fumble, the last one you'd expect to have a miscue and something like that when it comes to special teams, that obviously plays a big role in the early scoring in the game. And if you take that away, which you can't, special teams is an important phase of the game, but if you take that away, then the tone of the game does feel a little bit different. I think you're making a pretty good point on that. And one of the reasons why tonight I think the prevailing feeling of UGA fans should be a sense of celebration. Carol brings a really good point. The best thing she says that she saw was the leap by Swift. It's actually become semi-commonplace to see players leap other players in a football game because, in this day and age where you can't, hit above the shoulder, guys are just starting their tackling process a lot lower, and that gives an opportunity to leap. So we've seen lots of leaps. I mean, there's an entire highlight reel of Georgia players who've done that. I would suggest we haven't seen anyone leap any higher than DeAndre Swift did tonight. I didn't know he could leap that high, period. It was one of the amazing displays of athleticism, and I think if you want to boil this game down to a single highlight, that may end up being that. Tom Harlow checking in from Okinawa, Japan. He says, I can see the comments now with a new phone. Well, Tom, I'm glad to have you a part of the program. Winston Mock, talking about some of the issues, saying, is the offensive line overrated? We've been saying this now for a while, that the opposition is not going to just stand there and allow themselves to get mauled by Georgia's big offensive line. They're going to try to use their quickness. They're going to stack extra players inside there. And I think the challenge for Georgia is, what do you do when that happens? You can't just allow yourself to become just completely neutralized. At times tonight it seemed like Georgia, to a degree, certainly had a hard time getting an offensive rhythm on that. Found some success by countering that by going up tempo, which I thought was an interesting move. Then you have a couple of what certainly seemed to me to be faked injuries by Notre Dame players. The confession booth there on campus in South Bend, Indiana, may be pretty busy tomorrow based on the actions of a couple of Notre Dame players during the game. Certainly seemed less than forthright with some of that behavior, but it was a night to go back and forth. And counter Notre Dame trying to take away what Georgia wanted to do most. Georgia forced to make some adjustments, and they didn't do that. And of course, we talked about some of the special teams miscues. Obviously, give a lot of credit to Rodrigo Blankenship, who goes 3 for 3 on field goals tonight. Maybe that last field goal. One of the things I want to see more from Kirby Smart, and this is just me talking, maybe you feel a little bit differently overall, but one of the things I want to see from Kirby Smart is a willingness to push the envelope a little bit on fourth down. I thought punting the football inside Notre Dame territory on what was about a 4th and 3 from kind of inside the 50. That's a moment when I think that Kirby could have been a little bit more aggressive. The Blankenship field goal near the end of the game, which were important points for UGA, It's also a chance, though, in a 4th-and-1 situation, after your quarterback had put his life on the line, try to get you close to that. Why don't you reward that play with some confidence? This is a night to celebrate a Georgia win, but it doesn't mean that every single moment is going to be worthy of praise. That's a situation from Smart where I don't mind you going for it on 4th down there. When you've got the better team, you got to be willing to be the more aggressive coach in this game. I thought that was an opportunity for Smart to do that. Tonight, he did not do that. Darnell Alford calls them the flopping Irish instead of the fighting Irish. I think that's a pretty funny line. I appreciate that. And we'll continue to take your comments as a part of our Pella Windows Postgame Show. We'll also take a lot of your comments on YouTube here as well as we continue to talk about everything that happens in Georgia's 23-17 win against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. To look at some of the stats here, Fromm does go 20 of 26 for 187 yards. Has a touchdown, does not throw a pick. DeAndre Swift goes 18 carries for 98 yards, finds a touchdown, only averages 5.4 yards a carry. Brian Herring only averages 5.3 yards a carry. Overall, Georgia averages just 4.6 yards per rush. That's a pretty key number for a Bulldogs offense that's obviously been dominant there in that regard. This was an example of that not quite happening tonight. Looks like we lost our lights there. Okay, there we go. We'll see if we can get those cranked back up again over there, our lights, and that way some of y'all can see me a little bit better here as a part of our Pella Windows post-game show. We'll see how that continues to roll itself on here. And, of course, it's I'm certainly glad to be able to have all of you with us, and certainly look forward to taking some of your comments here coming up on YouTube as well. By the way, speaking of our friends at Pella Window and Door, they can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. They're family-owned and operated. They've got a branch right here in Georgia, which means you get the combination of both. The power that comes from being a national company with also backed by a local service, and they've got a great deal for you right now. You can currently get 50% off qualifying installations or 0% APR for 48 months. It's valid through November 14th. There are a couple different ways for you to get in touch. PellaSoutheast.us, that's the website, PellaSoutheast.us, or give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. It's 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is certainly viewed to be the best, and we're happy to have them as part of our Pella Window postgame show here tonight. All right, let me see if I can pull up some YouTube comments. We'll see if we can take a few of those and give you a chance to weigh in no matter which video platform you're watching tonight. Georgia gets a win. What a night it was in Sanford Stadium. Unbelievable atmosphere created by the new lights and the new toys that Sanford Stadium now has to play with. Georgia fans, though, even without that, they did their part to make a big impact on this. And when I look back on this game years from now, that's really the thing that I'm going to look most at. Georgia's got some issues that it needs to address if it wants to be compared to the national championship contenders in college football. We won't deny that. But overall, this is a night to really reflect, I think, on what an incredible environment that was in place and just how many programs in college football look on with envy to say, why can't our program create a commercial like that? I happened to be on the field before the game. I saw the throngs of recruits kind of walking through, and when you see that taking place, you have a tendency to then think about what must this game have looked like to their eyes, and I'm pretty confident that many of them were quite impressed with what they saw and quite anticipatory, possibly, of what it would be like to play their college years between the hedges. Pretty cool night, all in all, when it comes to that. All right, over here on YouTube, Kyle Bell says, I'm honestly glad we faced some adversity against a good team. We did not face any last year until it was too late and it bit us. I think we got back healthy on the bye and we get better from here. I think that's a pretty good point, and I think that health is an interesting thing to bring up because obviously, Georgia knew it was already facing the issue of one of its cornerbacks being down, and then tonight for a large portion of the game, Georgia was forced to play without Eric Stokes on the offensive side of the ball. Solomon Kinley leaves with an injury. So Georgia definitely had injuries become a factor for tonight. However, we also believe that this team right now is built with depth in such a way that it ought to be able to withstand some of those injuries, and that's what they're going to try to do. But, this odd scheduling where you have 2 bye weeks, all of a sudden now this bye week coming after the Notre Dame game, where at one point in time it might would have seemed a little early for a bye to happen, all of a sudden now that starts to seem like a lot better bye situation. So certainly worth thinking about. Momentum, talking about some of the special teams issues that Georgia had today. Yeah, Mo, you can't deny that. Whether it be opportunities for punts that could have pinned Notre Dame deep where the Dogs weren't able to do that tonight. Obviously, the Simmons miscue comes up here as well. Other than Blankenship, who was true on his field goal tries, this was not a great night for Georgia in special teams. And if you want to look at why Georgia made the playoff in 2017 as much as any other reason, this was a team among the national elite when it comes to its special teams and its kicking game. Tonight, it was certainly less than elite with a lot of that, and that's the kind of thing that on the pursuit of a national championship can get you in a little bit of trouble. I think that's certainly a fair thing to bring up. Greg Rosenberg on YouTube says, they were loading up the box to stop the run. I'm surprised we didn't take some more play-action shots down the field. We have a really vanilla playbook in the passing game. Yeah, Greg, I don't think that's an unfair criticism. Now, I don't think that the thing we spend the most time talking about tonight ought to be the failings of the Georgia offense, because ultimately Georgia got a win tonight over the number 7 team in the country. And while it may have been less than the experts were expecting to be, I think the Vegas point spread is not going to do a whole lot to dampen the mood in downtown Athens right now and all the tailgates where folks are having a good time. This is a win that's going to be celebrated. However, I think the factual nature of your statement can't be denied. That when Notre Dame did some work tonight to take away the Georgia run, Georgia's response to that wasn't always great. Later on in the game, you had guys like Lawrence Cager step in a big way, but I think for a lot of Georgia fans, saying George Pickens only targeted one time tonight, that's going to disappoint, at least by my count, only targeted one time. That's going to disappoint some UGA fans. I thought you waited way late in the game to start trying to take advantage of the man coverage that Notre Dame was showing a lot. And I think when teams want to dare you to throw, I think if you don't then turn that around with aggressive tactics of your own, then I think you're rewarding their willingness to be aggressive. And you hated tonight to see the less talented, less favored team, the underdog in this game. I thought at times tonight was the more aggressive team on both sides of the ball. That's not what you want to see. I thought Georgia did wait too late tonight to get aggressive offensively. It didn't hurt them to the tune of winning or losing the game, but it's certainly an issue to be addressed. Greg, I think you're bringing up a pretty good point. Osiris asking about Jeff Sintel. Jeff is here. We're going to squeeze him in, and we'll bring him in. Manuel Infante says, what did you think about Pickens getting mugged? Yeah, Manuel, I thought you could call pass interference on that. I guess there's also a chance that maybe I'm seeing that the way that I wanted to. I think if you want to go back and look at the first quarter situation with DJ Daniel, hard to imagine that Daniel, what he did to get flagged, was any different than what a couple of the Notre Dame guys did that prevented them from getting flagged. And D-Dawg kind of talking about the same thing there on that. James Carney says, I think the swing pass game, looking 4 yards after the catch, is not UGA's game. That's Bama and LSU this year. We're a run team and a play-action team. Yeah, James, I think that's a pretty good point. I'm going to slide in here, let Jeff Sintel come in here and be a part of this thing. We'll see if we can get us squeezed in here and give a chance to talk about that. And, Jeff, I've kind of said 2 things. By the way, you're watching our Pella Windows Postgame Show. We're live here at the UGA bookstore. We appreciate you being a part of that. And I know you've run to get over here, so I'll give you a chance to catch your breath a little bit. To me, there's 2 really big takeaways for this game. The first one, to me, is the most important. This was the single most awe-inspiring night I've ever spent in Sanford Stadium, and I've been coming here for a long time.
Wow.
The show put on by the new cool lights and the noise that was put on display by the fans, and hopefully that translated on television as much as it was. This is the coolest spot to be in college football based on tonight. I know there are a lot of programs that are very jealous they can't put forth the kind of commercial that Georgia put on tonight. I know Alabama's got its lights. It's probably chomping at the bit to use those after Georgia was able to use those tonight. So that, to me, is the most prominent takeaway, that Georgia had itself a very, very nice commercial advertised on an over-the-air broadcast network to all 50 states. That, to me, is the 1A headline above the fold. Below that, this is an offense that did not keep pace with the national elite, and I thought it allowed its bread and butter to get taken away, and it took it a while to figure out how it wanted to respond to that. I thought Kirby Smart and James Coley were way too conservative for almost the entirety of the night tonight. That's not as significant as the fact that Georgia got the win. This is a night to be celebrated, but you better believe by the time next week rolls around, we're going to be talking about what Georgia needs to do to put itself in the national championship conversation on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, so there's a lot of points. First of all, this was a football game tonight, and I don't mean that lightly. What I mean with Georgia is they took a lot of adverse things that happened today. Did you see, Eric Stokes leaves the game, Tyson Campbell wasn't available. You see Solomon Kinley go down. You see the adverse thing where Tyler Simmons puts the ball on the ground and Notre Dame cashes in a touchdown. I know the sports entertainment world would love to see that that score wiped off the board, and you just can't coulda, woulda, should that because that's a football game. Here's the above-the-fold thing for me. Post-game interviews. Notre Dame, let me start with Notre Dame. 2 or 3 Notre Dame players said the difference in this football game was the Georgia crowd. They said they couldn't hear. I think there were at least 4 or 5 procedure penalties that you could chalk up to at least miscommunication because of the decibel levels. And then J.R. Reed, who's been around a lot of Sanford Stadium environments, he said that juice is what I need every time we play DawgNation. And for me, when you're talking about the vibe and the coolest spot in college football, this to me was the introduction of Georgia maybe having some sort of 13th man advantage. Everybody talks about Georgia's crowd, I think, pushed them a long way towards this win tonight.
Robert Hosea says anyone crying about how he won got to sit down. This is a great win for this team. Robert, I think that's well said. And, Jeff, I've been coming to Sanford Stadium since I was a kid in the mid-'80s. There have been moments when Sanford Stadium was as loud as anywhere, but maybe not sustained. What you saw tonight, though, was like nothing I've ever seen. I was on the field an hour before the game. You had student sections full in all the different areas where the students were sitting. I mean, it wasn't just loud, it was cool, right? I can only imagine and we'll talk about some of the recruits that were there, but when you see them sitting, you have a tendency to want to see the game through their eyes. I can only imagine what they would have thought about that. So, on the one hand, I thought the fans did an incredible job of creating an amazing vibe for the game, but then to hear the Notre Dame players say what they said, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not surprised by that at all. I mean, you can count, at least 6 or 7 false starts that Notre Dame has tonight. Yeah. This was truly an impactful crowd, and that's not in kind of like the platitude, glowing, just pat yourself on the back type of way. No, the proof is in the pudding in terms of the way the results played out. Connor Riley's going to join us here for a second.
Kirby Smart called it the most impactful crowd he's ever seen in his time as a coach today.
Yeah, so that's a guy that's not only been at Georgia now for going on 4 years, but spent a lot of time in Alabama, as an assistant, prior to that. That's a guy that's seen some big-time crowds. And, Jeff, I don't think that's an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration tonight.
So we almost need to verify this as fact because Kirby Smart says it in his post-game presser. Connor and I were there when we were talking to J.R. Reed. J.R. Reed said, I need that every time, DawgNation, give me that juice. And then you have Notre Dame's players saying the crowd was a big difference in the game. The one thing that, I got a question for you, B.A. Did you like how Georgia mini-trolled the crowd with the normal lighting, and then they went back with a kind of a remix or a mashup and then the redlining, I think it took it to another level.
Yeah, listen, it was like the best rock concert I've been to after the Light Up Sanford, which we've gotten used to seeing, and they were using the blinking stadium lights for that. To have them completely shut that down and go all red. And someone had kind of tipped me off before the game. They were going to turn them completely off after the Light Up Sanford. But when they told me that, I wasn't quite sure why. That didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time. But all of a sudden now, like the Light Up Sanford has been taken to another level. When that thing glowed red, it was amazing. And you better believe this. All of a sudden now you think people complain about noon starts now? When this is what is available to when it's a night game, you got
$5 to the ticket, man, because that's probably worth the price of an extra $5 on the ticket.
When somebody gets stuck playing at noon, there is going to be some complaining going on because obviously it takes all of what we saw tonight kind of out of the equation.
Well, it takes what it takes, Brandon. Remember, we heard that all week.
We have heard that. That was the line.
I think what was funny is one of Kirby Smart's post-game comments was he thought, and I don't know, maybe this was him just being tongue-in-cheek, but he said he thought the power went off for a little bit because he's like, whoa, what's going on here? I want to talk about one thing. 2 guys, and I hope you guys appreciate this because recruiting in depth, and this is what it means. You see Tyson Campbell out. You see Eric Stokes out. You see Tyreek McGee coming in. But then you see a guy like Devod Wilson. I think Devod Wilson on the offensive side, on the defensive side of the ball, and Isaiah Wilson on the offensive side of the ball. It was almost like he was going to be ready for whatever, and he said he's good enough to play, but it indicated to me that he wasn't 100%. And it was almost like, Kinley, who's out. We saw him in a walking boot coming back onto the field, who looks like he's out, definitely out. Obviously, the off week's going to help a lot. We're going to get updates from Coach Smart about that. But it was almost like Isaiah Wilson came in off the bench, stabilized the offensive line, and I can't believe I've taken this long. I must have said 700 words by now. And I wonder if you brought this up. Good golly, Miss Smiley. Did you see the DeAndre Swift leap?
I told the crowd, I told our audience before you joined us that because the above the shoulder hit's been taken out of the game, leaping plays by runners have actually become more commonplace in college football. You can do an entire highlight reel with just Georgia players alone doing that. Charlie Warner's done that. A lot of the running backs have done that. However, and I know maybe in the moment we're prone to exaggeration, I don't think anyone's ever jumped any higher. I mean, DeAndre Swift jumped into the air on that one. I really do think it is. Connor, who can't hear, he's off mic, said, is it better than the one we've seen from Todd Gurley, no Sean Marino? Because of the sheer height of it, I think it is. I mean, I saw it in real time, then I saw the replay, so I haven't had a chance to really study it yet. But I didn't know that DeAndre was bringing that kind of vertical to the table.
Oh, yeah, a lot of box jumps for him. You know how much he works out in the offseason with his father, Darren. I got one thing about, though. You know, it doesn't have the exclamation point ending like a touchdown or anything else like that. You know, no Sean's didn't either. It was just a vertical play, an explosive play. But and then, Georgia fans, I want you to think about this. Tyreek McGee back in the game, who hadn't played a lot. Yeah. J.R. Reed even noticed that. And that's where Georgia's depth came about. And then on that penultimate drive, Brandon, I hope you noticed this as well.
Penultimate means next to last for those of you.
Okay, on the ultimate drive. But on the ultimate drive, you're looking at the end of this game, and Eric Stokes comes back on the right side of the field. He matches up with Claypool during a lot of those big ending moments. And, Brandon, when the ball game is on the line, when the toe meets leather, you would call it, chestnut cutting time, whatever you want to say, since we have a family program right now. I looked on that Georgia defense, Brandon. I saw Nakobe Dean. I saw Nolan Smith. I saw Jermaine Johnson. I saw Devod Wilson. I saw Eric Stokes limping back in. You saw the future of the Georgia defense right there with the game on the line.
And you saw that Georgia's third down defense tonight involved a lot of those newcomers. And I even put this in our forum. And by the way, if you're not following along during the game in the forum at forum.DawgNation.com, on key third downs all night long, Georgia's defense involved Trayvon Walker. Nakobe Dean was a part of that. Nolan Smith was a part of that. Jermaine Johnson was at least in some respects a part of that. And then you saw Adam Anderson kind of working in that spot maybe a little bit more. So if you want to know how the 2019 class for Georgia's working out, look at third down tonight. However, you also have to give credit to Notre Dame here a little bit because Georgia was trying to do everything it could to get pressure, and Notre Dame was neutralizing that with its play calling tonight.
Yeah, they were getting rid of the ball a lot, quick game, and also Ian, you got to give that young man credit. The California kid showed a lot of foot speed and getting out of the corner and just extending plays and buying time. I mean, they were frustrating the rushers. One other freshman I got to make sure to mention, Brandon, you're gonna love watching the DVR copy of this game and watching Trayvon Walker.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Here's what Notre Dame did. They're right. Okay, 290-pound semi-Mac truck coming down on kickoffs. They assigned two men to blast Trayvon Walker a lot. He got nose to nose with a couple of Notre Dame guys, forced a penalty. I mean, that was in the game plan for kickoff. They were going to sting Trayvon Walker.
It was every kickoff.
Yeah.
I mean, every kickoff tonight, he was fighting with somebody. And you're right, they set up a wedge on him. That got negated by a touchback. There was a penalty on him at one point in time. So it was very interesting to see, because we've kind of joked about this. Those people that watch DawgNation daily, regularly, listen to our Pella Windows Postgame Show regularly, people kind of know how big of a deal we've kind of made of Trayvon being on kick coverage. And then seeing Notre Dame fixate on him tonight as much as they did was a great thing to see. Hey, real quick, we're watching the Pella Windows Postgame Show. We're live here at the UGA bookstore. Huge day of autograph signings here that involve Champ Bailey, Chris Conley, and so many others. And that's kind of true each and every home game here at the UGA bookstore. So hope you'll come by and check that out. Also want to thank Pella Window and Door for being a part of this as well. Make sure you remember you can get 50% off qualified installations right now, or 0% APR for 48 months. That offer is just valid until November 14th, so you've got to act on that right now. Energy-efficient windows and doors, that's what Pella Window and Door can provide for you. It's PellaSoutheast.us, that's the website. PellaSoutheast.us, or you can give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. Once again, 404-445-2979. Chris Johnson mentioned in our Facebook comment section a little earlier, Zamir White doesn't get a carry tonight. Kind of interesting. And listen, with Georgia using as many running backs as it is, someone's going to be kind of on the outside looking in. But a little bit of a surprise, I guess, that it's White that we're saying that about through 4 games.
Yeah, but that he doesn't play. And Georgia was trying to work in James Cook late when they kind of ignored him. I've got 4 names for you. We're going to mention a lot of game names, a lot of these game stories that are being written right now. I hope they have a lot of these names in there. Number 1, point of significance here for DawgNation in the Pella Postgame Show. DeAndre Swift has his career high in carries for Georgia. Georgia, 18 carries for 98 yards. Another name to think about, Lawrence Cager. Georgia found something tonight, I think, with Lawrence Cager as another option in the passing game. One more name. I hope you guys are thinking about it. Tay Crowder leads Georgia in tackles with 9 tackles today. And, folks, yeah, these young folks are coming, but it's still a very good story when a young man like Tay Crowder from the 2015 class at Georgia, one of the holdovers from Mark Rick's Georgia. He came in as a wide receiver, was a running back, then moved over to linebacker. He's jumping through the air like Spider-Man a lot, making a lot of big plays. Tay Crowder. You know, I think the bow on this victory for Georgia is you got to call this a team win, a next man up win, and how can we forget the last gentleman I wanted to bring up, Rodrigo Blankenship, clutch. I think he nails 3 more field goals tonight. Differences in the ball game.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I think that's really well said all the way around. A lot of comments coming here on YouTube. We'll talk a lot about those. By the way, Matt Rukavina brought up a good point, too, I wanted to ask you about. So, admittedly, I spent most of the week saying that I thought that Georgia was going to win this game easily. Matt reminds us this was a team that was 12-0 in the regular season last year and, played Clemson close for part of that playoff game a year ago before the final score kind of got out of hand. I mean, do you think guys like me and a lot of Georgia fans who kind of felt the same way? Because, I really didn't hear many Georgia fans in this tailgate before the game today who thought this was going to be close. Is this an example of us just not giving Notre Dame enough credit? Because they do come in here to the extent that it matters. They covered the spread. To the extent that it matters, they gave Georgia everything they wanted. Is this just an example of Georgia fans, not maybe me included, just not giving Notre Dame enough credit coming into this game?
I think Georgia, if you want to pass out report card grades, I think Georgia would get a C or D grade in the kicking game, Brandon, especially the special teams. Jake Cremard has set up 2 of Notre Dame's big drives with short shank field punts, and then you also got Tyler Simmons putting the ball in the
But what about your take on Notre Dame? I mean, is this Georgia fans just not giving Notre Dame?
Notre Dame's a very good football team, to be very clear there. I mean, what they did at the point of attack, they held Georgia up. They kept Georgia's havoc away from their quarterback. I thought they had a very good game plan. It could be said that Georgia was getting out-coached early in the game. I think you touched on those points in the beginning of your show. Notre Dame's coaches were putting their players in a position to win early in this football game. But, Brandon, this kind of smells like to me that this is a game that Georgia loses in the past. This is a game that Georgia, has a struggle win but loses a top 10 ranking and gets stunned underneath a big marquee type opponent, big marquee type matchup in their own place. And, one of the things that J.R. Reed also said, he was kind of very, very important after the game, is he said his offseason program, the way Georgia works, the way Georgia fights, the way Georgia competes all up and down the roster to get guys ready, he saw that as a big indicator of the win for Georgia tonight.
Rich Nixon says this was a playoff game feel, and I do think that Rich brings up a pretty important point here that this was the kind of game where Georgia had to reach down, dig deep to find that win. Kirby Smart likes overcoming adversity. He does obviously no coach wants adversity, and the kind of adversity tonight born out of injury, Kirby Smart definitely doesn't want that. But I do think this game provides Georgia fans a springboard and an opportunity to grow from this. I think that Kirby Smart learned something good about his team tonight. This wasn't necessarily the show for 60 minutes that every Georgia fan wanted it to be, but in terms of what Kirby can learn about his team, DJ Daniel, getting some valuable experience here today as a for instance on that. I think Kirby Smart knows he can go to work next week, and he's got 2 weeks now to get ready for the next game for Georgia against a pretty awful Tennessee team 2 Saturdays from now. But I think that Kirby Smart has some stuff he can use for the next couple of weeks. And this growing from adversity that Kirby Smart kind of always talks up, I think this game does give you a chance to do that.
What I saw early in the game, I hung my hat on one comment Kirby Smart said, because I think what was Joe Smart guy at the tailgate saying today is they said, okay, Georgia averages 280 approximate yards rushing per game. Notre Dame's giving up 230 yards rushing per game. Everybody thought Georgia was going to cut through them like hot butter. But then Kirby made the point this week, I think, where he said sometimes stats are misleading. You got to look at what's happening, the ebb and flow of the game that kind of leads to those yardage and those kind of lopsided totals. And you saw a team, Notre Dame tonight, that was very physical at the point of attack. I think they matched Georgia in a lot of areas. And one thing, Reporter Tribe tonight, I'm sure Connor heard this as well. Reporter Tribe was trying to pick a scab about every time Georgia tried to go tempo and had a lot of success, there was a mystery Fred Sanford heart attack by some member of the Notre Dame team.
I've already said this. the confessional booth on campus in Notre Dame tomorrow is going to be busy. There's going to be a line out the door for folks having to come atone for some of their misdeeds here tonight because there was some less than forthright behavior. Bush League by Brian Kelly. I don't mind telling you.
Trying to win. How do you really feel about that, Brandon?
Don't mind telling you. Bush League on the part of Brian Kelly.
So it was funny when Jake Fromm fielded a lot of comments like that. He's like, man, I'm just trying to win a football game. Don't have a lot to say about that. No comment. Some reporters tried it with other players, too. Most of the Georgia players just towed the company line on that.
Well, along those same lines, and I've got both comments on Facebook and YouTube coming in about the ACC refs tonight. And I don't know what to make about that, Jeff. I saw a lot of calls I didn't like, but, I'm an emotional guy. I'm in the midst of the game and the heat of the game, and there's going to be some stuff you don't like. Certainly seems like if you want to put DJ Daniels' pass interference flag next to some of the bumping and holding and all this kind of stuff, especially on the one on Pickens, I mean, come on now. What are we doing?
Yeah, and like the play out of bounds, where like Claypool basically had his hip flexor and half of his gluteus maximus out of bounds, and they called that an in. Did you get a good replay view of that? What'd you think about that?
Okay, so I told some of the guys I was sitting next to, I thought, and I'll admit on this one, I thought it looked like he might have gotten his foot down, even though his rear end was kind of, on its way to being out of bounds. So I didn't complain about that one as much, and it's kind of interesting that you didn't hear a whole lot of booing from the crowd on that. Maybe the moment was just too tight. It sounds like you thought that was grounds for a overturn.
Well, there was a lot of things that went against Georgia's way. We talked about those in kind of my opening comments right there. But, Brandon, you remember Jake Fromm trying to get the first down, and they say his knee was down early, and he takes a shot to the He takes a shot to the head when he's trying to extend that play. Lots of things in this game to kind of think about, Brandon. I checked my phone, and I got to tell you this one. Let me call you an unnamed recruit. You want to hear something funny about this one? They told their parents about this game. They said, it's kind of funny. I was at a party where they were playing a lot of music and everybody was dancing, and then a football game broke out. That's a pretty good way to describe it right there.
That's exactly what I want recruits to be saying. Somebody in our Facebook comment section, I'm trying to find the name. I believe it was Chris Snyder, and if I'm not giving proper credit for this, I apologize. He brought up a pretty good point, that Georgia now becomes the first team in 2019 to beat a team that made last year's college football playoff. That's a pretty good stat.
Pretty good stat.
I don't mind that. That's the kind of stuff we need as part of our Pella Windows Postgame Show.
This was also the first time Georgia was down all year, correct? When they fell down. Connor, is that right? Yeah, Georgia hadn't trailed to anybody so far this year. They come back, and, there was kind of one of those moments where –
they've also mostly played McEachern High School up to this point, so, I mean –
correct, but, sometimes you just have to, make sure that the Georgia State stuff does not happen.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So a lot to talk about, a lot to like. It's the Pella Windows Postgame Show. We're live here at the UGA bookstore. And by the way, boy, what a great spot this is to kind of come in here and check on all the great UGA apparel, whether it be Vineyard Vines, Peter Millard, Tommy Bahama, all the stuff from Nike 47 brand. You want to get stocked up and dressed up and ready to go for a big day of cheering on the Dawgs. The best place to get all of that is right here at the UGA bookstore. Really good stuff. Chris Snyder was the guy that said that before, so Chris, that's a pretty good thing. Clint Haynes has given me a face down emoji. I apologize for that. I don't know what that's about.
I want to get you on the postgame show, Pella postgame show record on this one. Craziest, most amped up crowd you've seen in Sanford?
Not even close. Not even close. Before the game started, that was already true.
And then everything just kind of built up and added to it. One of the things players were noticing in the game is somehow that decibel level is becoming part of Georgia's lexicon for football games. Players were looking at that on that Lawrence Cager touchdown, and they looked up at the board, and they saw 106, 107 decibels on that touchdown. And again, guys, I think Lawrence Cager made he's your leading receiver for Georgia tonight. 5 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. He's had back-to-back touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. Somehow the senior was able to get loose and make some plays while George Pickens was trying to get scattered, smothered, and covered like Waffle House's finest plate. And almost a really great catch for Dominic Blaylock tonight. Did you see that one where he almost reeled that sucker in?
Oh, yeah, very impressive indeed, for sure.
And I'll tell you one thing. One little thing you pick up when you're on the field, Brandon. You know how Notre Dame has those flecked helmets with all the gold paint on it? I was noticing that kind of battering ram and just trench warfare in the line between Georgia's defensive line, especially Nolan Smith and those tackles. He was trying to bull rush a lot of guys as well, and Georgia had basically made it like a NASCAR fender in Talladega, where that gold was gone on a lot of the crosshairs of those guys' helmets on the apex right above their helmet shield, their eye shield. That gold was almost gone because because there was so much physical contact going on down there.
That's exactly right. A lot of folks want to talk recruiting. Osiris mentioned this. So do me a favor, give me a little bit on this. In the forum tonight, we were able to provide your report that one, somewhat intriguing visitor was confirmed, and then you could add a surprise visitor to this list tonight. Give us a little bit of a thumbnail sketch for kind of where you saw recruiting tonight, and some of the names that you saw that were interesting, and maybe at least one or two names you didn't expect to see.
I don't want to bury the lead here, Brandon. I think something good's going to happen out of this visit tonight.
Wow.
I think something good's going to happen. It may be tonight, maybe tomorrow night, maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday. I think something good's going to happen out of these visits in this game tonight. Some little snippets I saw. First of all, Jordan Birch did make it. That's what you were kind of hoping to see. Who would you call as your most impressive, Brandon, eye-opening visitor? Is it Tank Bigsby, the running back, or is it Jordan Birch actually making it in town?
I mean, you can't deny the drama of Bigsby being here, just given the situation with what might or might not be going on with Zachary Evans. The fact that Evans said
he was at Texas A&M today, by the way, as well.
That's a good report. So Evans does go to that game. The fact that Georgia, has Bigsby on campus, I like them both. I like Evans. I like Bigsby. But I talked to 100 Georgia fans today that all said, hey, give me Bigsby right now. If Bigsby wants to come and be a part of this class, I'll take him right now. Other Georgia fans will say, no, I want the best back in the country, which some people think Zachary Evans is. It's hard not to acknowledge, though, there are a lot of Georgia fans who are going to take it as very good news that Bigsby is here.
Yeah, it's got to be very good news because, that young man has loved Georgia for the longest time. There's been some up and down, hot and cold, yin and yang of that recruiting relationship. Brandon, let me tell you about another snapshot. Front and center, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams' his mother and Caleb Williams' his father were right there front and center as an official visitor on the first row of the West End zone. If you like that one, I'm gonna one-up that story with something I saw that really bodes well for the future of Georgia football. 3 young men were about some business tonight. And what I mean by that is everybody else is cozy in their little seats. The very top of the recruiting bleachers, I saw 3 names. I saw Kendall Milton, Tate Ratledge standing up, looking over the railing, watching, pointing out the whole game. Joshua Braun, the Brontosaurus, was there as well. Those 3 guys were kind of shoulder to shoulder up there, and you couldn't help but see that image and think, future of Georgia football looks very bright. Got one more thing for you to share. So, and this is, I'm going to try and put it into words. I'm going to try and verbalize it. So, Theo Johnson, Darnell Washington, and Carson Beck are sitting front and center on their official visit. And you should have seen the faces of those 3 guys, because Carson Beck had only been to Georgia one other time, and that was for a South Carolina game, I believe 2 years ago. And Theo and Darnell had never been there for a game. Darnell Washington, of all people, had never been to a college football game before, except for tonight. And everything else is going to pale in comparison, Brandon. What if you took anybody that took their kid to the Georgia Notre Dame tonight, the Notre Dame game tonight, and they're going to be like, oh, all college football games quite like that?
Yeah, no college football game's ever been like this quite ever when it comes to some of the trappings around the stadium during the game, for sure.
So it was just the little things. When the solo trumpeter starts up, well, those recruits are like, what's going on? And they're looking around and they're pointing up and they're going, oh! And there's a look of awestruck. And then the next thing Georgia did, it seemed like Georgia just kept one-upping themselves, because after that it was the Georgia Bulldogs. And you folks have been to so many Georgia games, it kind of seems like vanilla ice cream to a lot of you folks. But for someone that's never seen that before, they're looking around like, what? They pop up their phones. And then, folks, when that stuff went red and Georgia started throwing a light up Sanford or whatever, they're literally on their phones showing everything else, and they've got their mouth wide open where you could probably toss a beanbag in the mouth. And their mouths, they were so awestruck by what they saw tonight.
That's great to hear. I love that. I love the idea of watching this game through their eyes. And, as someone who obviously roots for this team and wants it to do well, I say thank you to all the people who have made this game tonight so entertaining for me. And that was the 90-plus thousand folks in attendance here tonight. It's a really cool thing to hear, and I appreciate that good recruiting update from you. Justin Clark says that Demetrius Robertson has a good. Sorry, Chuck Clark says Demetrius Robertson had a good game tonight. It's very interesting to see. When healthy, this is a guy that Georgia clearly wants to be a part of this. He's not afraid to go over the middle and catch footballs, which you really like. Lawrence Cager becomes that guy for Georgia a little late. So it's an interesting. I'm not too late. Later in the game, it becomes Cager who becomes that guy for you. Georgia has itself right now an interesting crop of wide receivers.
Yeah, and they do. And you got Cager, Robertson, Swift, and Blaylock. Georgia gets a win tonight where Pickens and Simmons are not involved in the line score. Not a big game. I don't think Charlie Warner caught a pass tonight. Did you see Charlie Warner? Did Charlie Warner catch a pass? Caught one. I think Wolf caught 2 or 3. So other things on the stat sheet you guys need to just kind of germinate in your brains. Okay, Ian Book throws 47 passes tonight. Gets picked off twice, once by Devod Wilson. We already talked about he needs a helmet sticker or a dog bone. If the Georgia did those things, anymore for the way he played tonight. J.R. Reed defended, I think, 4 passes, broke up 4 passes tonight. Finally got to eat greedy. Finally got to get an interception and celebrate that with the spiked shoulder pads on. And I'm sure Brandon, when he saw that play, you were up there doing that too, right?
I was doing what's that? The thing that he does. Yeah, I was doing that. By the way, Winston Mock, he wants to correct the record. He said that I said that he criticized the Georgia offensive line earlier. I apologize, Winston, if that's the way that came across. I apologize, but I'm glad to have you as part of our comment section tonight on our Pella Windows Postgame Show, live here from the UGA bookstore. Got a couple more minutes left. We'll take a few more of your comments here, and we'll get ready to wrap up, and we'll see if we can make it back to Atlanta, our hometown, before dawn.
Yeah, the DawgNation Express bus. Brandon and I are going to hot-foot it across campus to try and meet up with the DawgNation Express bus. I'm sure those folks are tailgating and having a good time. One other thing to think about from the Georgia's game tonight, Notre Dame's game plan, look at that, 14 carries, 46 yards, not much on the ground at all. I think 20 of those came from Ian Book on the ground as well, just extending plays. So Georgia's defense for a time tonight looked pretty sporty.
I apologize for the housekeeping here. How many more minutes do we have before we have to be on the run there? 8 more minutes. We're going to do 8 more minutes of comments, y'all. So let's do as many of these as we can in 8 minutes, because I'm sure the UGA bookstore staff wants to go home here as well. So we'll do as many comments as we can in the next 8 minutes. Jimmy Miller just says it in one word. It can't be said enough. DeAndre Swift. How about the performance tonight from Swift? You said this. I thought this was a good thing to bring up. Most carries he's had in his UGA career. Big-time players step up in big-time situations.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I know that's like the worst sports cliche in the world, but Swift kind of became that guy for Georgia a little bit tonight. Offense was hard to come by. Notre Dame, give it credit, had a good defensive game plan. Leaning on Swift, even though the overall numbers and a yards per carry standpoint don't exactly stand out the way you want them to, nice to see Swift be able to carry that load for Georgia. And obviously the highlight play where he leaps over the Notre Dame defender, we'll remember that forever. But being able to use Swift and lean on him, I think he proved an element of his toughness tonight.
Yeah, I don't know if Connor, let me bring him in a little bit. Did Kirby Smart make any comments today about the game plan and the short throws? I mean, Jake Fromm was 11 out of 12 today. He goes 20 out of 26 for 187 yards, 1 touchdown. What did you see about Fromm today? What did you see out of his game?
The one thing I complimented Fromm on the first half, even though some fans weren't all that happy with the game plan, and I understand that, I said this tonight in our forum at forum.DawgNation.com. Fromm continues to show you that he is elite in a very important area. He is an incredibly accurate thrower. He threw some dangerous balls tonight, but he put them right on the money. That's the one thing about Jake you just got to give him credit for, is he delivers the football into a spot as well as anybody. He's not the most athletic in the pocket, although his run tonight was pretty impressive. His arm strength is obviously not what some quarterbacks in college football are, but you'd be hard-pressed to find him ever missing a spot. And even in the first half tonight where some of the play calls you were left to say, is this the most aggressive decision Georgia could make here to punish a Notre Dame defense that's clearly selling out at the line of scrimmage? Maybe not. But when Fromm throws the football, he throws into a tight window with abandon. And I just love to see that from my quarterback. Very impressed with that.
I think he's got guys he feels confident in with Cager and Pickens where he can throw up and go get a ball.
But it's not just them. It's Wolf in the first half as well.
That's a good play too. I want to make, but there's a confidence he has now that I don't think he had last year with the receivers on that roster, because they weren't physically imposing men like Cager and Pickens, and even Wolf, who shows a lot of foot speed. You know what else I think when we're on the Fromm topic today? I think he showed a little bit today is he got on his horse a little bit and tried to run a little bit more, extend plays, because he saw green grass in front of him when the pocket broke. Again, I want to come back to this. I don't think Georgia gave up a sack tonight, even when they had a lot of guys coming in and out on the offensive line. I saw Justin Schaefer in there at points tonight. You saw Cade Mays, and you saw Ben Cleveland on one side of the line. You had Andrew Thomas still as the mainstay there, and you started moving people in and out. And there were some points here in this game where Fromm tried to make some plays with his leg, which is something that that's one of the knocks on Fromm. He wants to see people want to see him get those first downs when he has a chance to get those.
Yeah, so I love seeing him try to get that first down with his legs. I mean, that's the kind of thing where he just earns. He's already got infinite trust, seemingly with his teammates along the offense. But a moment like that gives you even more of that. Y'all don't let me go long here with our time.
Two things to think about. The punter for Notre Dame tonight I thought was excellent, Bramblett. He put 3 or 4 balls inside the 20. I'm looking at the stat sheet tonight to just confirm that. He averaged 47 yards per kick. You look at Georgia, 35 yards per kick. Those are those hidden yards in special teams and in college football. And I think if you looked at both Notre Dame scoring drives, they were set up by shanked punts tonight.
Yeah, that's right. That aspect of the special teams, Georgia did not win tonight. Obviously, got a big game from Rodrigo, but it's really telling that even with 3 crucial field goals, even though that last one I think Kirby Smart played way too conservative on, but 3 big field goals from Rodrigo, and then you would still say that overall Georgia lost the special teams battle. That's pretty telling tonight.
Yeah, the other thing to think about, though, Brandon, I want to double down on what you said just there and come back on one point, maybe push back a little bit. If Kirby doesn't make that field goal late in the game, Georgia's last 3 points of the game, then that's a 3-point game down there at the end where Notre Dame's driving and they can convert that and tie the game.
Or you could have just gotten the first down and won the game. I mean, listen, this is a thrilling win today. A lot to be happy with, but I'm going to be consistent on this. I want to see Georgia be more aggressive. I want to see Kirby Smart as a head coach be more aggressive. I don't want you punting inside your opponent's territory, and I don't want you going 4th and 1, kicking a field goal on 4th and 1 when you have a chance to win the game. That's going to be my issue with Kirby Smart. I want the more talented team to have the more aggressive coach, and right now that's not the case.
10-second point there on that, Brandon. That sounds great and all. The woes with Florida, the woes with the red zone and everything else like that. Everybody remembers those. Reminder, that's a patchwork offensive line for Georgia tonight as well. And that maybe made the trepidation on those play calls a little bit.
Fair enough. And there's plenty of room to debate on the other side. I certainly acknowledge that. Let's see if we can do one more comment. We're going to kind of get ready to get out of here. Really good stuff. Huge thanks to Pella Windows for making all this possible. Georgia Peach says he agrees with me, but who's going to tell Kirby Smart this? Not me. And I guess it probably won't be me to do that either, because I can only imagine how that would be received. Chris Lambert says Cager played a great game. Is Cager getting your game ball tonight? I think Devad Wilson was an interesting argument for that on the defensive side of the ball. Ultimately, you going to give this to Cager tonight?
No, I don't think Cager. I'd give the ball to the defense, because I think the defense was the most dominant unit. I just listened to you talk about things that you didn't like about the offense. I think of J.R. Reed. I think of Tate Crowder. I think those type of guys. And even coming back in with Tyreek McGee and Eric Stokes on the third level, I think Devad, Tate, I think those were the big shining stars for me tonight.
All right, really good stuff. Thanks so much for being a part of a Pella Windows Postgame Show. We'll obviously have a lot of time to talk about this as we head towards throughout the week. So join us here on DawgNation Daily for that throughout the week. We'll talk to you about everything that goes on with Georgia as it gets a 23-17 win over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. What a night it was. An unforgettable scene created by Georgia fans. An unbelievable impact on the game. The Notre Dame series, home and home, that was scheduled all those years ago. It is done. It is in the books. Georgia won them both. 3-0 for a program career against the Fighting Irish. Final thought.
Final thought for me is it's going to be a long week, and then it's Tennessee the next week, and we might have to wait a minute, Brandon, before we can really check the oil and see the improvements for the Georgia team that you were prescribing tonight.
Thanks so much for being a part of a Pella Windows Postgame Show right here at the UGA bookstore. We'll talk to you again soon right here on these DawgNation video channels.